I am going to jump now to religion. And pardon me for calling it religion because we call it relationship. But what I want to do for you is I want to act like a free agent. Ben, you and I, we exist. We're free agents. We may have been born Jewish, maybe not. But what we want to do is we want to figure out, if I were just wandering the earth, and I just came to this presentation, there is God. There is a creator. But maybe the creator wants me to be a Muslim, or a Mormon, or a Hindu, or a Buddhist. Why Jewish? Like I said, just because you're born Jewish, is that a reason to engage in it? If you were a free agent and someone was an intellectual and they said, let's check out every religion that exists, would you come up with Judaism at the end? So what I want to do, yes?
I have a coworker who did that. And he studied theology, he went through all the religions, and ultimately he converted to Judaism.
We give him an extra clap. The reality is, it's an interesting reality. I've never met an Orthodox rabbi, an observant rabbi, who's converted to Christianity. But I have met priests who have converted to Judaism. I've never seen the other way around. Okay, but what I want to do is I want to go through religion, but listen up carefully. Listen really carefully. I don't want this to sound to you like I am bashing religion. I don't want it, and if you're going to think that I will, then I'm not going to do this experiment, because I respect everyone. I happen to be a free agent, and as a free agent, it is my prerogative and my obligation to find truth. And therefore, if I see something that to me does not resonate as truth, I will say it as a free agent. But if you have an issue with it because, oh no, Rabbi Klatzko spoke against Buddhism or Hindu, right? So then I can't go there. So any of you have an issue with us doing this? Okay, if you don't have an issue, I'm gonna go forward. We're good? Okay, so don't come back to me and say, oh, you spoke against. No, we're just figuring stuff out. If we were free agents and looking for religion in the world, here is how we would do it. First off, there are two kinds of religion in the world, and we're going to do it very systematically. It's not so hard, believe it or not. There are two kinds of religion in the world. One is called philosophical religion, and the other is called a historical religion. And when you look, you can look for historical or philosophical. Okay. Historical or philosophical? Okay, shh. So as a free agent, which one do you want to choose first? Well, we have to define our terms here. A historical religion means that it's based on some point in history where if we were to go back in history to the moment of origin, we would know it's true. A philosophical religion does not make a claim to a historical truth. It simply says that I have a philosophy about life. You love it, great. You don't love it, goodbye, that's okay. If I am looking for truth, which one do I want to start with? Philosophical or historical? Always historical. Why? Because a philosophical religion may be compelling to me today. I'm going to turn my phone off all the way. It may be compelling to me today, but 5 years from now, it no longer speaks to me. If there's a philosophy about life, let's say Buddhism. Anyone ever study Buddhism? Okay, so let's go to the history of Buddhism, okay? There was a prince. His name was? Right? Siddhartha. And Siddhartha grew up in the lap of luxury. One day, he went out among the village people, and what did he see? He saw poverty. He saw poverty. He came back to his princely father and mother and says, what's up with that poverty? And they say, don't look at them. They're not people that we deal with. We're the kings, we're the princes. And Siddhartha did not like that. So he started making secret trips out of the palace to check out the poor people. And it bothered him so much that he didn't know what to do with himself. So his parents were nervous. He's gonna do something rash. So what did they do? They got him married, because marriage solves everything. And he had a bunch of babies, but he still was not satisfied. He kept making trips outside to check out the poverty. And one day, he snuck out of the palace and he left, and he began a journey. And the journey was to understand everything. And he journeyed and he journeyed and he journeyed and he journeyed. And one day, he sits down underneath what tree? What? A Bodhi tree. He sits underneath the tree, and he is there for 7 days. And he's meditating and meditating and meditating. And all of a sudden, he is enlightened. He comes to an epiphany. That's what it's all about. And then he goes out and he speaks to wise men in this temple and that temple. And they hear him and they're so impressed with his knowledge that they become his followers. And he goes around spreading enlightenment. Now, if you were to go back in history, what would you see? If you want to know the point of origin of Buddhism, what would you see? What would you see? I'd take you in a time machine and I'd bring you to Siddhartha underneath the tree. What would you see? Him sitting there. A guy sitting under a tree. Does that compel you that it's the truth? So even if the philosophy about the interconnectedness of the universe and people and the cosmos, even if that's interesting, it doesn't tell me it's true. So a philosophy, Hinduism. Anyone study Hinduism? Hinduism. What is Hinduism based on? It is multiple gods, it's a godhead and so on. But what happened was a fellow by the name of Krishna, he passes a cow one day and he says the following, I kid you not. I kid you not. He passes a cow and he says, cows give milk, mothers give milk, thus a cow must be the mother. And from then on, cows became sacred. That transference, which is the highlight of Hinduism, happened later on in Krishna's life as well. Krishna once walked and he bumped into a... No, he bumped into a vessel. He bumped into a vessel. And I guess he hurt himself and he was very angry. So he took the vessel and he shattered it. And it makes perfect sense because that's how transference works. If a cow is the mother because it gives milk, then a vessel is evil because it hurt me. It's a philosophy. So if you are looking at religion, you start with historical religions like Mormonism, like Judaism, like Islam, like Christianity. Now, so let's take away philosophy, philosophical religions. Let's go. Guys, we're going to do this very quick and very easy because a lot of times I'll speak to students and they'll say, well, I'm Jewish, but I don't really know. I didn't check out all the religions in the world. I didn't learn all their different texts. You don't have to. I'm giving you a hack. Here's the hack. Here's the shortcut. If you do this, you can skip all their books. You just have to know the following code. Ready? Historical religions all have 4 steps. And all you got to do is, as a free agent, you have to agree with those 4 steps, and you're good to go. You want to hear this, Sam? This is going to be cool, quick and easy, simple. Step number 1, historical religion. All historical religions believe that we are a creation. They all believe that we're not a product of chaos and accident. Every historical religion believes that we are a creation, okay? And that's what we talked about before. Step number 2, all historical religions believe that we're creations created by a creator. Does that make sense? Yes, because if there's a creation, there has to be a creator. Number 3, all historical religions believe that we're created by a creator for a purpose. Not for nothing, but for something, for a purpose. That means if I paint a painting, you may not understand the purpose of that painting, but I had an intention. If I see a Jackson Pollock and it looks like just splotches of paint on a canvas, do I assume it had no purpose? No. Creators create for a purpose, right? They all agree to these 3 steps. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Mormonism, every historical religion. It is step number 4, my friends, bang. Step number 4 is where every single historical religion breaks apart. And all you have to know is step 4. This is what it's all about, my friends. Religion is step 4. What is the step 4? The creations were created by a creator for a purpose. And at some point in time, the creator told the creations what the purpose is. Again, the step 4 is, at some historical point in time, the creator actually conveyed to the creations what that purpose is. Right? It was told. It was told. And this is where they all break apart. When was it told? How was it told? And if the narrative of when it was told doesn't make sense, or I don't agree with it, or there could be another rational explanation, then the whole religion disappears. The whole religion falls apart. All I need to ask a religion is, what's your step 4? What's the point in time? And me being a free agent, me being a member of the jury, I'm going to hear what you propose, and I'll say, well, that makes no sense. Goodbye. And I don't have to read your books. I don't have to look at your laws. I just have to look at your step 4. So in order for this not to be vague, let me go through a few examples. And because I used to table on campus next to the Mormons, they're all so good looking also. So, aren't they? So I want to go into the step 4 of Mormonism, and then we'll just cover a bunch of religions, what their step 4 is. And I want you to tell me, ready for this, Tyler? I want you to tell me if you're convinced that that step 4 is valid. You'll either say yes or no. Okay? What is the step 4 in Mormonism? Okay, so let's just go back. Here's the story of Mormonism in a nutshell. There was a young, illiterate man by the name of Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith, he is in his house. He's illiterate. He doesn't know too much. He is in his house. And one day, he is approached by an angel. And the angel lights up the whole room. And the name of the angel is Moroni. Moroni. And Moroni beckons to him, and he tries to ignore him, and Moroni comes back again and again. And finally, he says to Moroni, what's going on? And he says to Joseph Smith, hey, Joe, I want to show you something. He says, you know, Jesus, when he roamed the earth, there was a lost tribe of Hebrews from the tribe of Dan. And that tribe ended up migrating to the United States. They became the American Indians. And Jesus decided to visit the 2,000 years ago American Indians. And he gave them a gospel, the last one that Christians don't have. It's a new gospel. And it was given, and it was written in ancient hieroglyphics, in a very unique form of hieroglyphics, and it is written on a golden plate. And I'm going to show you where that golden plate is hidden. So Joseph Smith goes up the mountain, Mount Gilboa in upstate New York, and he digs, yes, and he uncovers a gold plate with hieroglyphics. And he says to Moroni, I can't read this. And Moroni says, don't worry. Right next to the golden plate is a seer stone. What's a seer stone? You look through that stone and you're able to translate. So he goes home. He wasn't that literate, so I don't know how he was able to translate, but he goes home and he calls his friend and he says, listen, I was just approached by this angel and I dug up this gold plate and it's got the new gospel. I want you to write down what I tell you it says. And the friend says, can I see this gold plate? And Joseph Smith says, the angel says, I cannot show it to anyone. No one may see it. No one may see it. So he takes the gold plate, he puts it in a hat-like thing, he covers his head with a shmata, and he begins to give over the Book of Mormon. And his friend, his neighbor, is furiously writing down anything that he says. And wrote. Joseph Smith is saying. And finally, he has got the writings on this gold tablet. He goes home, this neighbor, and he says to his wife, wow, you know what just happened? My friend, he had this golden plate, the lost gospels of Jesus given to the American Indians. And his wife says, Jesus didn't have a lost gospels. He gave us all the gospels he was going to give us. And she got very upset at her husband, and she takes the papers and she flings them into the fire. He goes back to Joseph Smith and he says, I don't know how to tell you this, but all the work that we did was for nothing because my wife threw it in the fire. And Joseph Smith says, no worries, we'll do it again. He covers his head with a shmata and he begins to dictate again. But the friend remembers what he wrote the first time and it's really coming out different. So he says to his friend, he says to Joseph Smith, 1 second, it didn't say that last time. So Joseph Smith said, that was a punishment to your wife for throwing it in the fire. The words are recompiling differently. Now, let's stop over here. It gets more bizarre. This is just, it evolves into magic underwear, by the way, but we're not going to get there.
Like, how did the American Indians get into this? Like,
That's
really
my
confused.
question. And like, timelines don't match up there.
I really don't understand that one.
I don't think in the mid-1800s they knew the answer to that. This is the mid-1800s. Yeah,
Like with a lot of religions, just supposed to take it as a metaphor, but don't they literally think that this happened?
they do, literally.
Wait, is this story written down?
Yes, written down, yeah.
As part of the book?
Yes. If you even want to see a short cartoon, I bet you could YouTube it. Yeah.
You said that he was illiterate, right?
Yeah, how did he read it? Yeah. Magic, seer stone. So listen up, shh, guys, listen up. How many of you are now converting to Mormonism? I want to tell you, shh, my voice is almost gone. Listen up, I want to tell you, I once was giving this class and I was speaking about Mormonism and I had my daughter next to me. She was 6 years old at the time. She's very smart. And I'm telling this story and she is laughing and laughing and laughing. I go, ah! You don't remember what he said? No, he just made it up. Like, shh, let them come to that. So the step 4 in Mormonism is what? Moroni coming and giving the golden plates. Did that happen? Could it have happened? Maybe. Are there alternative explanations? Can somebody give me an alternative explanation? Psychosis. Schizophrenia. Okay, so therefore, it could be the Book of Mormon, which I own. It could be the Book of Mormon is a very compelling book. It could be, it's got lots of good morals and values and analogies and parables. But that means nothing because the step 4 doesn't resonate. Do we agree? I don't care how good the book is. If Numbers 4 doesn't resonate, I move on. Members of the jury, let's have Muhammad come up. Yes.
What do you mean by number 4 doesn't resonate?
Meaning, if you heard this story, which is the transmission of this godly Moroni, are you convinced by that story? Are you intellectually compelled that that happened in order to change your life?
I mean, I'm not, but other people are.
I'm not saying that. I'm just speaking about Noi. Okay, so that's it. We all make our own decisions. I'm not judging them. I'm just saying for me, and then for you, as we're going through this exercise, how does this speak to you?
So for number 4, originally you said you were gonna like define the purpose, but that was more like it was. Are you talking more like it was told? Because that's more of the backstory versus the purpose.
No, it's the truth. So let me quantify. It's the transmission of that purpose. At some point in time, the transmission of that purpose was told. Number 4 is the transmission of the purpose. It's a little more exact. So is that transmission? Right, is it right, the transmission of the purpose. Okay, good, I'm glad I'm gonna put those words over here. The transmission. Okay, yeah.
What makes, with Mormonism, how do they... No, I understand.
Ask Mitt Romney.
There's so many people that follow it now today,
Yeah.
and so like what makes them believe that it's true?
First of all, when you're raised with something, by the way, there are more Mormons than Jews. Just in case you're wondering, yeah, more Mormons than Jews. They just overtook us.
Obviously they believe that.
Yeah. Okay. Shh. Next, guys. Gotta move on.
What was your answer to his question?
Oh, why do they believe it's true?
Like they're so convinced by it. Like what makes them so convinced?
I think.
And getting other people to follow.
I tell you, it's a combination of what Noy just said, which is that you grow up with it. You like the values. You like the traditions. You don't question too much. It's the only way I can understand it. But next time you're on a plane next to a Mormon, ask him. That's what I do. I'm very open. Okay. What? Okay. Shh. Next. Can I have your attention? Shh. Next. Islam. What is the transmission of Islam? So really quickly. Shh. Again, illiterate. Muhammad, illiterate. And he ends up in a cave. In a cave, he is approached by who? Angel Gabriel. Angel Gabriel comes to him in a cave and says, "You are the new prophet." Comes to him countless times, gives him the book of the Quran, says it's from God. Comes Muhammad, has the scribe write down what he says Angel Gabriel told him, and thus Islam begins. Now, it's very simple. It's a very simple story. Anyone here think that Angel Gabriel could have come to Muhammad in the cave, given him a new set of laws, and told him to tell everyone it's true? Could it have happened? What are the other possibilities? What? Extreme dehydration. It was in a desert.
Lying, like he lied to people.
Why would he lie? Power. Right? Schizophrenia. Okay, shh. Islam, just by virtue of the fact that it has 1.3 billion followers, doesn't make it any more true. Someone once said to me, "Well, why are there so many followers?" I said, "Big deal. Christianity has 1.5 billion, and they disagree with Islam. So you already see that 1 point something billion people could be wrong. So once you see 1 point something, so just like they could be wrong, they could be wrong. Are you convinced if Muhammad comes in front of you and says, from now on, you have to start eating halal meat, and if you steal, you get your arms chopped off, and so on and so forth? Do you have to listen to it based on him coming out of a cave saying he had a vision? Yes or no? So again, now when I was in UCLA, so it was interesting. I lived right next door to the Palestinians. And right next door, there was a gate, a chain link fence next to me. At our first major barbecue, the Palestinians, in order to sort of stick it to us, they got undressed in their underwear and like stood there and like, yeah, it was weird. However, I ended up becoming really friendly with them. How did that happen? How did that happen? I mentioned to somebody that I used to collect art. So I once ordered a painting, and the painting had, it was the Western Wall, but the painting had the Dome of the Rock too prominent for my liking. Actually, for my wife's liking. She said, the Dome of the Rock is most of the painting. You got the wall, but I don't want to hang something with such a prominent Dome of the Rock. So I thought, hey, who's going to enjoy a prominent Dome of the Rock? The Palestinians. So I went next door, and I said, I got a present for you, and I gave them this painting. And from then on, they just loved me. They gave me rides when I needed a ride. Yeah.
Maybe they felt like you were giving them the Western Wall, though.
Yeah, representing.
Whoops. Whoops. Yeah, I think so. So one day, they said, listen, we want to show you why Islam is true. They said, we have the best book that you'll ever read, and you'll read this, you'll be convinced that Islam is true. So they gave me a book. It was a colorful book. It was sort of a pamphlet, but it was bigger than a pamphlet. And it was Proofs to Islam, and the cover was a green-red, beautiful picture of Mecca with, you know, the millions of people there at Mecca during the Hajj. And I began reading, you know, I want to understand. So I began reading Proofs to Islam. And I felt bad for them after reading it, like, really? Really? That's your proof? So can I share with you, this is more not, it's a little off topic, but here's the Proofs to Islam. Proof number one, and this took up like a lot of space in the pamphlet, a few pages. It says in the Quran that Muhammad was able to tell us what a tiny fetus looked like. How could Muhammad have known what a tiny fetus looks like before medicine became so advanced? So, 1 second. What does it say in the Quran? It says that a tiny fetus looks like a chewed up substance. And next to it was a picture of a piece of gum that was conveniently chewed to look like a little fetus. It looked like this. And it had like these bite marks. And this was 3 pages of a chewed up. I promise you, I have the book at home. This is like their yeah.
How do you know it was a piece of gum?
It was a piece of gum.
How do you know it was a piece of gum? It could have been a fetus.
No, it looked like a piece of gum.
Can you give me the book and I'll see if it's a fetus?
It was a piece of gum. Yes, I'll be happy to. You're stunned. You're astonished. I tell you, I was so innocent. I was innocent in those days. Okay, it was a piece of gum. It was a color. The whole thing was glossy. It was like clear. Then the biggest proof that Islam, and by the way, till today, the biggest proof to Islam is the following. Listen up. This is what any Muslim will tell you. The biggest proof to Islam, because they know you can't prove Angel Gabriel met with Muhammad. The biggest proof to Islam is that the Quran is so beautifully written. It's a work of such genius, it could not have been written by man. Period. End of story. That's the proof. Now, I've looked into this concept, like, why would this proof be a proof? And I'll tell you what I've discovered. People who argue with Islam say the following. The fact that human genius exists is indisputable. We've had Shakespeare in the past, right? We have Walt Whitman. We've got Beethoven. We've got genius. We've got genius. The fact, now I own a Quran, of course, in both the original and the English translation. In the English, it's sort of a lame read, but I'll give it the benefit of the doubt that in Arabic, it's much nicer. Good. But even if it's extra nice, even if it's nice, does that prove that Islam is true because it's nicely written? Doesn't prove anything. Okay, last, let's go to Christianity, then we'll go to Judaism. Yeah?
I have a question. This morning at the wall, there's this lady preaching about Jesus, and I was just curious, what makes? No, I'm just curious. I always thought the wall is considered an emblem of Judaism. So what is there a reason that other people choose to pray their religion?
Essentially, Christians gain by connecting anything Jewish to Jesus. Because number one, Jesus was a Jew, and number two, it creates a closeness which allows people to say, I can be a good Jew, or I'm only a good Jew by being saved by Jesus. You use that kind of terminology. That's how Jews for Jesus started. Jews for Jesus. It makes no sense. Yeah.
I was wondering, since the Jews for Jesus topic was brought up, what your perspective is as to that certain religion. Would you qualify them as Jews since they say they observe the Old Testament, or would they just be more along the lines of Christianity?
We're going to speak about Jesus in a moment, but Jews for Jesus is a complete fraud. They're Southern Baptists. It's a complete, utter, total fraud, and lots of Christian denominations disavow them, they disown them. Because they say, if you want to convince people, then tell them about Jesus. Don't pretend. Don't say, Shalom, Torah, Yeshua, da-da. Just be real. Be yourself. But it's sly, it's sneaky. Okay, let's get into Christianity, shall we? Since we're in America, and in America, Christianity is all the rage. What is the step 4 with Christianity? Anyone? Who said Paul? Okay, hang on to yours because that's the correct answer. Okay, shh. First thing I want to say something that may sound controversial, but it really isn't. Really, really isn't. But I need to say it. There's a really, really good chance that Jesus never existed. Okay? It's a really, really good chance. There was never a person named Jesus. I will explain to you why more and more historians are saying the following. There's never been a person. His life story is mirrored by lots of other theology. Remember, King Herod said that all the males should be killed. Does that sound familiar? From where? Pharaoh, right? The wise men and the myrrh comes from other religions as well. The whole theology in the beginning is a theology that is attributed to other religions. But even more so, every place that we expect Jesus to pop up in history, there's a failure, and he doesn't pop up. And let me show you some of those places. There was a man named Josephus. Did anyone hear of Josephus? Yes. Okay, the Jews of antiquity. Josephus is one of the most famous and important historians. He lived around the time of Jesus, and the man Jesus is conspicuously absent from original Josephus writing. At that time, there was a group called the Essenes. Now, the Essenes lived in the Qumran, right near Masada. And we found their writings. Their writings are among the most important archaeological findings in history. It's called the Dead Sea Scrolls. Our group is going to visit the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'm really happy about that. One of the only groups that do that. I'm passionate about it. We have to see it, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Dead Sea Scrolls were found 2,000 years ago. They were found 70 years ago, but they're 2,000 years old. In the Dead Sea Scrolls are 5 complete Torahs, minus the Book of Esther, and all sorts of other writings that are historic. Lots of history, everything that was going on in Judaism at the time. Now, the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were originally found in, I think, the late 1930s, the original, then the 1940s. Essentially, there was a Bedouin kid. For those of you that do not know the story, there was a Bedouin kid who was herding his goats. And there was a goat that jumped into a cave that was really a difficult cave to reach. So the Bedouin shepherd did not want to climb up to that cave. So he took a rock and he threw it into the cave to get his goat to come out. When he threw the rock in the cave, he heard something shattering. And he was curious, what shattered? He went up, got to the cave, and he discovered broken pottery that he had broken with his rock, and all sorts of scrolls rolled up. And those scrolls were the beginning of the Dead Sea Scrolls. There were many caves around that area where these scrolls were found. They are the most important archaeological find. We don't have 2,000-year-old scrolls anywhere. The reason we have them here is because they were in a very dry, arid place in the desert, and they were untouched. And the dryness kept them intact. And they were brought to the antiquities, where right away they began to disintegrate, so they were all protected, and they began to be translated. And the translation of 15% of the scrolls was released to the public, 15%. And the years went by, the 1950s and 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, and the world wants to know, why can't we see the other 85% of the scrolls? It's ours. It's the public domain. We should know what it says in these scrolls. And word got out that the reason that the scrolls were not revealed is because it is very damning to the church. And the Vatican asked Israel not to reveal the rest of the scrolls. Because you see, the Essenes could have been the spiritual forefathers or even peers of Jesus. They lived at the time of Jesus. And it was expected that the Essenes, who wrote about everything in history that was going on in their time, would have written extensively about Jesus. But there was a suspicion that he was not there at all, even though it was written at his time. And according to Christianity, according to the New Testament, Jesus was a major rabble-rouser. People called him the King of Israel. And he should have been throughout the scrolls. And therefore, the rumor was, it's not mentioned, it was not revealed because there's no Jesus there. The year 2001, all of a sudden, 85%, the rest of the 85%, thank you, were unveiled. All of a sudden, after 60 years, the other 85% were all unveiled in one shot. I was a rabbi in UCLA then. When I heard on the news that the rest of the scrolls were revealed, I went running home to look it up. Because what was I interested to see, Ben? What they said. Right, if Jesus is there or not. Right away, on the first page, on the opening page of the Dead Sea Scroll website, it mentions that Jesus is not found anywhere, and it even says, why isn't Jesus found? And then some apologetic person gives an answer. Oh, well, the Essenes were sort of like his thing, so it was like. The people who should have written extensively about him did not write about him. More so, there was a piece of cloth that had the face of Jesus on it with the crown of thorns from right after his crucifixion. And this face with the crown of thorns is called the Shrouds of Turin. How many people here have heard of Shrouds of Turin? The Shrouds of Turin had been the church's greatest evidence for the existence of Jesus. Every pope has gone to visit the Shrouds of Turin. If somebody will take their phone, even though I told you not to use your phones, one person take your phone, Google the Shrouds of Turin so we can get a picture of the actual Jesus' crown of thorns. You got it? Here you go. The shroud, yes, the National Geographic did a whole thing about it. Shrouds of Turin. Does that look Jesus-like? Now, that is an embellishment, no question about it. However, they decided a few years ago to carbon date it. And it turns out that the shrouds of Turin dates back to the 1300s. 1,300 years after Jesus supposedly died. So it turns out the shrouds of Turin are a fraud.
So wait, what is the Shrouds of Turin exactly?
Basically,
It's
mostly like Jesus' burial was over his face.
And so, listen up. And so, one more proof of the existence of Jesus goes down the drain until the year 2007. 2007, there was a great commotion in the Christian world. The first tangible proof that a man named Jesus existed was uncovered. They found a sarcophagus, that stone, what are they called? I forgot what it's called. I'll remember in a moment. No, it says like a stone coffin. And on it, it said, Po Nitman, here is hidden Yaakov ben Yosef, Ach shel Yeshua. Who can translate that? Here is hidden Jacob, the son of Joseph, the brother of Jesus.
What?
Yeah. So for the first time, Maggie's like, for the first time, there was actually a man named Jesus. Except it turned out to be a fraud also. How did they know it was a fraud? They found out it was a fraud for two reasons. Number one, Ach shel Yeshua, brother of Jesus, was written in a slightly different vernacular. The letters were a different dated letters, so that you could see it was added afterwards. But even more damning was that the patina inside of the letters, the patina is that green moss that grows inside of tombstones. You ever go to an old cemetery, in the engravings, it looks greenish. That's called patina. Patina is the most important tool that we have to figure out where something is from. You can analyze the soil of the patina, the dirt of the patina. It's very, very important. But one thing about patina, it's very hard to scrape off. And they went to this sarcophagus with a fingernail, and it just came off like butter. Like butter, just came right off, which means that it was just added. And then they found the person who forged it. And that was the last time people tried to prove the man existed. The reality is, I don't really care if he existed or not. It doesn't make a difference to me, except that truth to be told, it would be good to know if he even existed. Some people say the Talmud said he existed. Wrong. Ken Spiro, who is one of the greatest historians of our day, and I hope he's going to speak for our group, he said the dates don't match up. The person of the Talmud who mentions as a fake Messiah, that was 100-year difference between that and the supposed Jesus. Even Christians agree that things like Christmas were not when he was born. Holy, no, that wasn't holy. What was the 25th of December?
Winter solstice.
Right, winter solstice. And what holiday is Christmas really? Saturnalia. To celebrate the planet Saturn. Why did they make it the 25th of December? Because when they tried to convert the pagan Romans, they had this awesome holiday called Saturnalia. And Saturnalia was, you guys know what Rumspringa is? Okay, like for the Amish, it was like Rumspringa for the masses. One day that you could do any crime and get away with it. You could sleep with your neighbor's wife. You could exact revenge. You could steal your neighbor one day a year. Saturnalia. Fun. It's fun. So listen up. So the Christians knew that the Romans would never want to give up Saturnalia. So what did they do? They perpetrated a lie And they said December 25th, winter solstice, is suddenly the holy night of Jesus' birth, based on a known lie. And yet, the Pope in the Vatican still goes to Christmas Mass as if it was a serious thing. But it gets much worse. My friends, I am much more comfortable speaking about Islam than Christianity, because Islam is based on one implausible event. If Angel Gabriel spoke to him, then you buy into it. There's just no proof that he did. Christianity, honestly, is a cartoon. Every aspect of it is implausible and irrational and known falsehoods. That's why when Christians laugh at Mormons, I don't get it. Yeah.
Wasn't Easter also kind of a thing to see who was Jewish because you ate ham and bread?
Correct.
Right next to Passover.
Easter was an awful day for the Jews. It was a day that they killed Jews. I don't even go into Easter. It was awful. Wait. I know you're, yeah, go.
Okay, I just want to like, what's the consensus today among Christians? I mean, do they know? Like, are they still like preaching? Like, what? Like, how?
Hallelujah. Wave your hand and pass the plate. I can't justify the unjustifiable. I really can't. You can buy Darren Brown all you want. It's just not going to do it for me. Yeah.
Is there evidence that his disciple, like his followers?
So here's what we got. Everything that we know about Christianity, all the stories, the walk on the water, right? Loaves of bread, right? The awakening of Lazarus. Where do we know that? Where do we know that from? Where do we know those stories from? Are you ready for this? Anna, are you ready? We know those stories because years after Jesus died, or supposedly died, there was a man who never met Jesus, whose name was Saul or Paul. And Paul, well, his Hebrew name was Saul, it was Paul, and Paul is strolling down the road to Damascus when suddenly he has a vision. And the stories were in the vision. So you're talking about, hold on one second, you're talking about a vision, just like Islam. You're talking about a vision of a guy who forgot to bring water, right? The road to Damascus. And that's why the whole thing didn't begin. But it gets even weirder. Shall I present you with weirdness? And then I'll call on you. Present you with weirdness? You ready for weirdness? Here's how it went. When Christianity began, so there were Jews who thought, hey, we'd love there to be a Jesus, even though Jesus, even in his positive words, added nothing to Torah, right? Jesus, if I ask people, who said love your neighbor as you love yourself? Jesus, no, Torah said it. Right? All the good stuff came from Torah, he just re-quoted it, okay? But you had Jews who were what we call Jewish Christians. What were Jewish Christians? Jewish Christians were Jews, observant, they kept Shabbat, they kept kosher, they did everything, just they believed that their rabbi was the Messiah. That's it. They believed their rabbi was the Messiah. They called Jesus their rabbi or their Rebbe. They said, my Rebbe is the Messiah. He is, and they were called Jewish Christians. They believed their rabbi was the Messiah. Then you had Jewish people. These were people who said, nah, he wasn't the Messiah. How could he be the Messiah? After all, what? He didn't do anything the Messiah is supposed to do. He did. The world is still war after his death. There's still destruction. The lion did not lie down with the lamb. They did not beat their swords into plowshares. No, they're just Jewish people. And then there was a third group. And the third group are what we call pagan Christians. Pagan Christians. Pagan Christians started the following way. After Jesus died, his followers still believed that their Rebbe was Mashiach. So they hung on. But as time went on, more and more of them disappeared. They began to disappear because, hey, Mashiach's not coming, there's still bloodshed, still anti-Semitism. So the people who were left said, hey, we've got to replenish our ranks. So they did two things to replenish Jewish Christians. They said, let's go to non-Jews and convert them to our way of life. So Paul, who was the great spreader of Christianity, because every big movement needs somebody to spread it. This is historically accurate. Whenever you have a big movement, you have a person who's sort of like the voice of that movement. They said, let's go and convert pagans. Now, in order to convert to Judaism, what three things do you need? Number one, you need circumcision. True? Number two, you need to accept all of the commandments of the Torah. How many commandments are there? 613. Number three is what? Mikvah. Now, Paul and his court said, look, are you guys with me? Are you with me, Max? Well, Sarah, you're with me? Okay. So Paul said, look, we want to convert the pagans, but we don't think they're going to go for circumcision. So let's just, guys, come join us, but first you got to cut off your, what? No, not doing that. So they said, look, circumcision, no, that's not going to go. So they got rid of circumcision for the pagans. Accepting all the mitzvot, listen up, accepting all the commandments. Do you think every pagan is going to want to start doing Yom Kippur and Sukkot? And no. So they dropped that requirement as well. So Hannah, what requirement was left? You got circumcision, they dropped. Accepting all the commandments, they dropped. So all that was left was mikvah. So what do they call that? Baptism. That's where baptism comes from. Baptism is just the third part that they preserved for the pagans. But it gets weirder. If you like this, it gets weirder.
I have a question though. How come baptism then, for example, you're allowed to baptize in like a swimming pool?
That's their halachas. It's their halachas. Okay, but it gets weirder. Are you ready for weirdness? Shh, you're going to love this. It's going to make you smile. When they wanted to convert the pagans, they had an idea. Rome just got a new emperor. His name was Constantine. So Paul's court came over to Constantine. They says, you know, by being a Roman emperor, your life is in danger, right? Because a Roman emperor, everyone wanted to kill him. So what did the first thing the Roman emperor did when he became the emperor? What did he do? He killed everyone. Not only did he kill everyone, he killed his brothers. In Rome, you don't care, you kill your brother, right? Like Caligula, right?
How is your emperor if you know to rule over?
What?
How are you an emperor if you know to rule over?
No, you got to kill people in your court because they may be loyal to somebody else. So you kill your advisor. You got to kill everyone. The only thing is Rome was a very sophisticated civilization. So you couldn't just kill them for no reason. You had to invent a reason. And that's how it worked in Rome. You had to say, oh, this person's rebelling. Right? You had to create a reason. So watch what happened. The Jewish Christians came to Constantine and said, we have an idea for you to kill out your enemies and to help your kingdom. Our idea is, let's convert Rome to Christianity. Roman was pagan then. Let's convert it, and then whoever doesn't convert, you can accuse them of heresy and kill them. So Constantine liked the idea. He said, tell me about this Christianity. Who's the guy? Who's the man? So they said, well, we had a rabbi, and his name was Jesus. And Jesus, he was this amazing person. He got up and he gave a sermon on the mount, and he had great things to say. And Constantine stops him in the middle and says, time out. I don't think you understand Rome. You see, in Rome, they're not going to worship a rabbi no matter how many good jokes he has, right? That's not what Rome is like. You know what Rome worships? You have to understand, Rome are the spiritual heirs of Greece. And in Rome, we worship gods and heroes. We make temples to gods and heroes. If Jesus were to fit into that category, then I can get Rome on our side. What is a hero? What is a hero? What's the definition of a hero according to Greek mythology and Roman mythology? The definition is somebody whose father is a god, whose mother is a mortal. Like Hercules, father Zeus, mother mortal, you're flesh walking on earth, but you're a god. If Jesus becomes a Roman hero, we can get Rome on our side. And thus began Jesus, Son of God, mother mortal, Roman hero, now we got Rome. That's why in early Christian writings, it mentions nothing about Jesus being God. It mentions nothing about it. That was invented later on in order to convert Rome, to make him into a Roman hero. Father God, mother mortal, now you're God in flesh walking on earth. Now we can get Rome on our side. That's where it all comes from. Okay, one last thing. You can go now. Thank you for staying. One last thing. If a Jew for Jesus comes over to you and they say, oh, you don't believe in Yeshua? You don't believe in Yeshua? So you know what you tell them? His name wasn't even Yeshua. You know who called him Yeshua? There's no name Yeshua. What is the actual name? Who said that? Yahushua. There's no name Yeshua. Yeshua? You ever hear the name Yeshua? It's Yehoshua. Call Yoshiaka. They take away the hey. They call him Yeshua. You know what Yeshua stands for? Yeshua was made up by the rabbis as a joke. It stands for Yemach, Yeshua. Yemach Shemo v'Zichro. May his name be obliterated forever. So when a Christian says, you don't believe in Yeshua? I sort of do. Sort of. So I believe in the Yemach Shemo v'Zichro. Okay. Now, having said all that, I want to tell you that I am glad I live in a Judeo-Christian society in America. And I'm glad that Christians back Israel, even though we are all aware that the evangelical community's ultimate end for the Jews is destruction. We're aware of that. Messianic times, the Jews all get wiped out. But until then, to fulfill the prophecy, the Jews have to be in Israel, and we'll take that. Because we don't believe the other stuff. Okay. There's more to be said about this, but I want to get on to Judaism, because we've spoken enough about other religions. It's important we get to Judaism. Why? Listen carefully. This is the most important part of the day. Why do Jews believe in Judaism? Here's the deal. What is our step 4? And why do we believe that our step 4, the transmission, is correct versus everything else that's out there? So the step 4, listen carefully, the step 4 of Judaism, when did the Creator tell the creations what it's all about? The step 4 in Judaism is Mount Sinai. That's the step 4. The Creator told the creations what it's all about. That was at Mount Sinai. So here's what you need to know about that step 4, the Jewish step 4 of Mount Sinai. Here's what you need to know. The Jewish claim is the following. When God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, when God spoke and all the Jewish people heard, there were approximately 2.5 million people at the foot of the mountain. It's easy to calculate that because the Torah goes into great detail who was there by name. And we have 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60. Just add another 600,000 women, right? Probably 1 for 1. And then about half that, 0 to 20. And then from 60 and on, 2.5 million people there. What makes this claim different than Muhammad? What makes this claim, listen, it's rhetorical now because I want to move. What makes this claim different than every other claim? Here's the point. The Jewish claim is that when God gave the Torah, when he transmitted the message of what it's all about, what the creation's all about, instead of giving it to one person, a Jesus, a Paul, a Joseph Smith, who then told their disciples, who then told their disciples, who then told their disciples, until you've got millions of people believing it, when you trace it back, it all comes down to the veracity of this one individual. If Joseph Smith did not really have that experience with Angel Moroni, everything falls apart. In Judaism, when God spoke to the Jewish people at the mountain, he spoke to everyone, to millions. Everyone, not millions, everyone. The rule was, in order to make sure that we never have a pyramid scheme like every other religion is, in order to make sure that every single person was there, God commanded every single person, no matter what, has to be at Mount Sinai. So you had transmission, God, to millions. And those millions then were each commanded to tell their own children, I was there, I saw. So then the chain, instead of looking like this, like a pyramid, the chain now looks like this. Like that, like that, like that, like that. And you have millions of chains from the outset. Wait, it's going to take a while. I have to build up. By the way, it was so important that every single person be there at the mountain. It was so important that if somebody was lame, they couldn't walk, God healed them. If somebody was deaf, God healed them. God said, I don't want even one person to say, hey, I had strep, I couldn't come. I had flu, I couldn't come. That's why, ready for mind blow? That's why hospitals are called Mount Sinai. Because it was the place where everyone got healed. Oh. I have to build it up first, and then we'll take questions. Every person had to be there. Every person got healed. So hospitals called Mount Sinai because that's where everyone got healed. Shh. Listen up. Every parent told every child every year. At what point does a parent tell a child that God took us out of Egypt and gave the Torah? Passover. Every person, and Passover is the #1 kept Jewish holiday out of all holidays, more than Yom Kippur, more than Hanukkah. Every parent, every child, every year. Now, let me explain to you why this notion is so powerful. If I were God, and I came over to Sarah Joy, and I said, Sarah Joy, I'm God, you'll be my prophet. Go tell the world there's a better way. There's a better way. So I give them the following laws. What do you this really happened. I'm really God. You're really hearing from me. What are you going to tell me, God? Nobody's going to believe me, right? Who's going to believe that I spoke to God? So you know what you may ask me? What may you ask me for? What are you going to ask me for? Proof. No, she knows I'm God, but proof for everyone else that she's spoken. Let's say a miracle. Let's say something so utterly dramatic that God must be the one pulling the strings. Give me a crazy miracle. You have a miracle? Give me a good miracle. Splitting of the sea. Okay, but you're not going near a sea. Give me a real miracle that you would want. What? Abe Lincoln back to life. I happen to like Abe. He's got a biblical name. Abe Lincoln back to life. Is that a good miracle? How about, just really quick, how about making a Mack truck float up in the air, turn around like 20 times, and then drop out gold coins for everyone there? Would that prove that God is on my side? Okay. That's what you want? I'm going to do that. Mack truck filled with gold. It's going to flip 20 feet in the air and then drop out gold coins. So this is going to happen. When do you want me to make it happen? Give me a day.
Tomorrow.
You don't want it to happen today because you want people to see it, right? People aren't going to see it if it happens today. So you need to have time to publicize it. So give it like 2 weeks. 2 weeks. You take ads in all the major newspapers. How many people do you want to witness that event of the Mack truck dumping gold coins? How many people? As many as possible. Okay, do we agree with that? Now, different scenario. This time take Hannah Eisenbach. Now, Hannah, you're a faker. I'm not really God. I didn't speak to you. You made the whole thing up. Hannah is starting her own little religion. And she thinks with her big smile she'll get everyone. No, but Hannah, let me ask you. You got a little miracle because you learned magic tricks when you were young. And you're going to do them in front of people to prove that you're the real deal. How many people do you want to do that in front of? Everyone, really? You're going to invite all the experts? You're going to invite all the experts to watch you? You get Penn and Teller to watch you?
If you're fake, you want anyone around.
Right. If you're fake, who do you want to be around? You. No, but you want to show a few people. You got to get the word out.
Maybe like your best friend that will like go and tell everyone.
Right, your best friend, or a few dim-witted people, right? If you go into a bar, get a few people. You don't want this on YouTube. You don't want that, right? You don't want it spread all over. You want it to be a few people, because you're fake. And if they're smart people, they're going to figure you out. So listen very carefully what we just said. Sherry, you with me? If you're real, you want a ton of people there. If you're fake, you want as few people there as possible. Listen to what we just said. Which religion insisted that a ton of people be there? Only Judaism. Every other religion insisted that only one person be there, and then they have to go spread it to the masses. Every other religion did it the exact way that you would expect a fake religion to do it. There's one tiny exception, but it's not a real exception. There's a story in the New Testament of Jesus fishing and producing loads of fish in a day when not a lot of fish were coming. And there were hundreds of people there. Well, he did it in front of hundreds of people. Yeah, who were they? Name names. Which 100 people? The other 100 people. You see, it's easy to say a ton of people were there if you don't have to say who. In Judaism, every person had to be there at the mountain. Every person had to be there so that we wouldn't rely on a rabbi. We wouldn't rely on anyone but our parents, who heard it from their parents, who heard it from their parents, who heard it from their parents. And even if they didn't understand the implication of, let's say, Passover, but they still did it. They went through the motions enough to get that notion across. But let's say that none of this happened. Let's say there was no Mount Sinai. I'm playing the devil's advocate. We're almost done here today, but I need you to hear this. Let's play devil's advocate. None of this happened. 1,000 years after the event was supposed to happen, a guy, let's call him Fred, makes up all of Judaism. Let's go to Fred. Here we go. Ready, Fred? Are you guys with me still? I know it's a long day. It's very important to know. Fred goes over to Molly and says, Molly, how about that Mount Sinai? God took us out of Egypt, split the sea, gave us the Torah. How about it? And what do you answer back? What? You know what I'm talking about. You know why you don't? Because remember, in this scenario, I'm making it up. In this scenario, I'm Fred, I'm making up Judaism. So, but I'm very convincing. So I say, Molly, it's true. And I speak to you for hours and I convince you that God actually did these things. So you know what you're going to tell me? You're going to say, okay, you said God gave us a Torah. Where is that Torah? But I knew you were going to ask that. So you know what I did? I prepared a written Torah in advance. So I whip out the Torah and I say, here, it's in writing, it must be true. There you go. God took us out of Egypt, gave us the Torah. And you're reading it and you're really impressed because it's there in writing. Until you get to one verse. And that one verse blows the whole thing up. The verse says the following in the Torah, listen carefully. The verse says, therefore, every parent should tell every child every year and it will never be forgotten. And you'll say, 1 second, my parents didn't tell me it was forgotten. You call up your dad and you say, Dad, Mom, what's up with that? What happened to Egypt? Every parent is supposed to tell every child. I didn't have Passover. I didn't eat matzah. I never heard of this. And what does your parent say? I don't know what you're talking about. Because remember, Fred made it up. So you'll say, ask Grandpa. He doesn't know either. You see, that's the whole point. Once you use a trickle-down system of every parent, every child, every year, you never have to rely on Fred. You never have to rely on Jesus or Joseph Smith, because from the outset, it was millions to millions. And even if a few chains got broken along the way, you still had enough chains that were solid that you could come to Israel on an Akiva trip and you could stop any person and they know about it and they've heard about it. Yes?
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
So at Mount Sinai, maybe I'm mistaken, but I didn't know God spoke words. How did these people hear?
Yeah, a lot of people, they looked at the movie, and the movie is the movie The Ten Commandments. God spoke to the entire nation. That's right clear there in the Torah. That's our transmission. It's very, very clear. God spoke to the entire people and gave them the Ten Commandments. Words.
Okay, and
How those words were, I could discuss. They were from internal, but they all heard the same words. There's no discrepancy. No, it wasn't Moses.
Moses was the only one on top.
Moses,
On top of the mountain.
right. Moses came down with the hard copy 40 days later.
okay, just I know this will be really hard to answer shortly, but I'm sure everybody wonders if God could make such miracles then for us, things happen. Why?
So it is a good question. You're right. It is a longer question. The simple answer is that miracles are not considered a positive in Judaism. God does it a one-time major event in order to prove that the Torah is true, that he connects with us. But he doesn't have to prove himself every time someone gets something. Well, I don't believe, do something special now. We don't do that. But throughout history, we have many, many scenarios, from the Purim story, to the Hanukkah, to the Six-Day War, to the scuds falling on Israel. There are plenty of times where the world looks at the Jewish people and say, you're a nation that literally lives on miracles. And real miracles, okay, yeah.
How can we look at, how can we say that we don't know that maybe there was some guy named Fred who went and told a bunch of people, and then maybe he was the one who told them, go tell your kids this. How do we know that this is not what happened?
There are a few ways that we know that. Number one, can you imagine a guy doing that and remaining anonymous in the Jewish people? Could you imagine a guy who rediscovers, but he's anonymous? Well, it couldn't happen. Now, that's just not who we are. Secondly, I'm just saying. Secondly, we actually have the exact transmission of the Torah from Moshe by name. As a matter of fact, if you come over to me, I think one of the other rabbis here could do this, I can trace my Judaism straight up to Moses. I could tell you my chain. I have a chain. My rabbi is Rabbi Weizman. His rabbi was Nachum Partzovitz. His rabbi was Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz. His rabbi was Rabbi Chaim Brisker. His rabbi going up with Zavil Nagon, on and on and on, up, go all the way to Rashi, Maharal, Rashi, going up. Right? There's a total transmission. There's no breaks in the action. One last thing, and then I'm going to give my closing statements. Yeah?
Okay, well, I have 2 quick questions. Well, I don't know how quick they are, but okay. The first one is, we know obviously Moses, Mount Sinai, all of that, but what about the fact that with Abraham, that he was the only, at that time, from up until Mount Sinai, all that in between, Abraham
Right.
was
We don't believe in Judaism because of the Abrahamic story.
But what about all the people in between that? How come they believed, Isaac and Jacob?
They're only because they had a personal connection with God. But we don't believe in the Torah because of their personal connection.
Okay, so then how were there so many Jews in Egypt?
They weren't Jews until they got the Torah at Sinai.
Oh, well, Hebrews who believed in.
People make this mistake very often. We weren't actually Jews in Sinai. When we left Egypt, God told the Jewish people, circumcise yourself. We went into the water, mikvah, and we accepted the Torah. We actually all went through 3 steps of conversion when we left Egypt. We became Jews through conversion as we left Egypt.
Okay, so the other question is, if there were so many people at Sinai who were passing down, why are there so few Jews today?
Because everyone always wants to kill us.
Yeah, so...
Besides that part.
So, yeah, we have been killed a lot, and I want to mention to you that, unfortunately, throughout history, there have been Jews who defected because of social pressures, because of wealth, because of persecution. That's just the reality. I want to move on. There's so much to talk about. I want to tell you, there was a man who was doing his thesis. He heard this argument that I just gave you about national revelation. He was very excited about this argument. He was very excited about it, and he decided, he was in Boston, he decided he's going to spend his time disproving everything that I just said. And he spent months and months looking at the evidence. And eventually, he wrote his thesis showing that the Jewish experience of national revelation is unique. It's never been duplicated. And this young man became not just an observant Jew, but he became a rabbi. And he was a professor of mathematical philosophy at Johns Hopkins University. And you can look him up online. His name is David Gottlieb, Rabbi David Gottlieb. And his entire reason for becoming observant was because of this argument. And I've spoken to him about this, and he has said, for example, when he was doing his thesis, he said, wait, maybe, listen up, maybe it wasn't God who spoke, maybe it was thunder. Maybe they heard thunder, and they thought it was God. Could that be? Then he wrote, well, that's assuming A, they never heard thunder before, and B, that thunder said, I am Lord of God, circumcise yourselves and keep Yom Kippur. Right? That thunder was a very articulate thunder. So, meaning each argument turned out to be so silly that there was nowhere to go with it. Last thing. Aside from the argument that we just gave at length of national revelation, where we are a people who each rely on parents, so we don't have that one Muhammad, that one Joseph Smith, that one Paul to go back to, but we have millions and millions going all the way down. Aside from that, archaeologically speaking, there is great reason to say that our Torah and our religion is intact. Think about this. How old did we say the oldest Torah is today? 2,000 years. So, could the Fred in our scenario have lived within the past 2,000 years? No, because we know we already have Torahs from before then. Okay? So, for the past 2,000 years, we've got Torah in the form of Dead Sea Scrolls, right? For 1,000 years before that, we have temple number 1 and temple number 2. That still exists, the foundation. Some of the measurements are still accurate until today. We see in those measurements that the Torah and what the Torah describes was alive and kicking. They even recently found a beautiful gold medallion from the times of early Second Temple that had on it a verse from the Torah, Yivrecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. They found, and I'm not sure if we're going to see it on it, we may have canceled this tour in case we didn't. They found right, a five-minute walk away from here, the palaces from King David's time. King David's only 400 years after national revelation. With bulias, the things, the wax insignias that they used to seal envelopes with names that are written in the Torah. So we know that Judaism was alive and active. There's no Fred for 1,000 years. That gives you about 300 plus years for Fred to exist and convince an entire nation that God came and told them all about Torah. But you don't even have 300 years because in the first 100 years, they were still alive, or their children were, or their grandchildren, or their great-grandchildren. So what are you going to lie to an entire nation and say, oh, you so-and-so said my grandpa's still alive, let me just ask grandpa. You're not going to lie if the people are still around. So basically, you've got 200 years to convince millions of people that they experienced God. Not happening. That's why Jews don't convert. That's why when Jews for Jesus comes a knocking, we send them packing. Because it's stupid. It just makes no sense. It's why you could scream Allah Akbar until you're hoarse like me, and it means nothing. Because the guy could have been smoking hashish in the cave, and then, let's be honest, it does nothing. Judaism is the intellectual religion. Its foundation is so incredibly strong. I'm going to point something out. You've got to understand this point. It is so compelling. Oh, my phone's off. What time is it?
5 to 1.
5 to 1? Listen to this point. Listen to this beautiful point. Christianity believes that Judaism is correct. They just say that we have the new covenant. We have the New Testament. Christianity says that Judaism is correct. Islam says that Judaism and Christianity are correct. They even say that Jesus was a prophet, like Moses. Islam says that. But they say we are the new covenant. So now you got Islam saying we are the new guys. Baha'i, you ever hear of Baha'i? Baha'i says, oh, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are correct, but we have the new covenant. On and on. What is the only religion that everyone agrees got it right? They all agree we got it right. They just say, but we're the new. Why do they piggyback on Judaism? They all do. They piggyback on Judaism because Judaism has national revelation and they've got single revelation, which is a very, very weak case. Now, there's much more to say. And I didn't get into evolution. I think I'm going to make that into a separate class. It's important to understand where Judaism is coming from.